artery. They went through the artery, in through the wall.
Oh my
and
God.
Blood started seeping into my sac around the heart.
I'm good, and I'm glad you're better.
Thank you. I am too.
It's really scary.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our September? We're September already? September? Wow. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Montclair Planning Board. Notice of this meeting is published in the local papers and also published on the township website. And it has been provided by posting a copy of the notice for the meeting on the first floor of the municipal building, and also by posting on the township website. We are being broadcast live on Channel 34, and we are being streamed live and will be available on demand on YouTube. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding, meaning that the board has powers and procedures that resemble a court of law, and we are obligated to objectively determine facts and draw conclusions from information and evidence rather that is presented to us. Any questions or comments, therefore, must be limited to what the board can legally consider in making an appropriate judicial decision, and order appropriate for a courtroom should be maintained at all times. First thing on our agenda this evening is our roll call, and I am here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And you're here too.
Vice Chair Brodock.
And I am here.
Mr. Graham.
Here.
Mr. Ian Wally.
Here.
Ms. Lockman. Mr. Ortiz.
Here.
Mr. Pierre.
Present.
Counselor Schlager is excused. Ms. Willis. Here. Mr. Chair Nguyen is here. Mr. Jacobson is excused, and Mr. Neiman.
Here.
And Mr. Neese.
I am here.
Okay, we have minutes from our August 8th meeting.
I received amendments to the minutes from Mr. Vice Chair Brodock. Are there any other changes? Is there a motion to approve?
As amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay. All right.
Okay, we have a request for an extension on. Oh, yeah, we have a resolution, municipal complex area in need of redevelopment.
I didn't receive any comments on the resolution.
Where's Jacobson when we need him?
I just have one, like a grammatical thing. I think there needs to be another quotation mark around council in the second paragraph, second sentence.
I think you're absolutely
Yep.
right.
Absolutely right.
I see that. All right.
Just so you know, we read these things. Just so you know, your hard work doesn't go in vain.
Oh, I think you've well established that. In fact, we've come to rely on it.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Carol? is
Ms.
that you?
Willis, yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I think I have to abstain.
Yeah, I think we have to abstain.
Abstentions, yep.
Abstain. Mhm.
And that brings us to the request for an extension on Adaline Master Property,
Okay.
403, 405 Bloomfield Avenue.
Especially if he gets it.
Good evening.
Mr. Kelly, is your microphone on?
Yeah, we
And-
can't hear you. If you turn on the microphone
And you
and.
probably
you
have to be quite close to
You
it.
need to
for
get
it
closer to it so we can record you.
Mr. Kelly, have a seat. We're all good. We're all comfortable.
There's a button that says push, so and it'll turn the green light on. So
There is a green light on.
the green light's on.
I try hitting it again. There you go.
It's
Okay.
on.
My name is Gerald Kelly. I was here at the time of the
request for the approval. And when I received the notice on August 25th with regard to the fact of no improvements having been made pursuant to the approval, and the approval has expired, I wrote to Ms. Talley and requested to appear so that I could ask for an extension on behalf of my client, which is the Adaline Moster property, 403, 405 Bloomfield Avenue. And since that time, I also had some discussions with Mr. Neese with regard to the municipal land use code. And the request was being made, and my letter had been written because the applicant has literally been foreclosed from proceeding because of the location. And I say that because the location is directly behind the Midtown parking lot. And that Midtown parking lot has been basically fenced off, barricaded off, and the only access to the back of the property at 403, 405 Bloomfield Avenue is through that one entranceway. And I know there's been delays, and it's been put off, and it was going to be opened at certain periods of time. But to this date, it is still not able to be opened. And as a result, the applicant has no access other than walking through properties to get to the back. And the actual construction that has to take place is going to be taking place from the rear of the building, and it may involve cranes, and it may involve, well, it does involve deliveries of the construction materials, and that cannot be accomplished, and it hasn't been able to be accomplished ever since, I believe, January 4th of 2021, when it was officially noticed to the residents in the town that that area would be cordoned off. So my request is really that the applicant has really had his hands tied, not because of any actions taken by the applicant, but really just what has been happening, in town, and that particular project, which is a big project, and continues to this time. The applicant has had in place since November of '21 the financing for this project, and has been paying on that financing since November of '21, but still is not in a position to be able to access the property in order to complete any construction or perform in accordance with the approvals that were granted. That's basically the request that is being made to the board. I have read the memo from Mr. Neese. I do point out, and he has pointed out in the memo, there are certain cases which talk about the discretion of the board. There are certain cases that talk about whether or not the applicant is ready, willing, and able to proceed. There are comments in cases with regard to if there's been no change in the zoning. We concede that there's been no change in the zoning. We just want to proceed in the manner that we applied for, and there hasn't been any change to our knowledge in the zoning in that area. That's basically the petition that's being made to the board, to recognize circumstances that you wouldn't normally run into, but circumstances that have directly, or it can even be considered indirectly, affected this project. Indirectly in the sense of beyond the control of the applicant, there has been no access to the area where the construction can actually begin to take place.
How much of an extension are you looking for?
Well, it depends when the garage opens up.
Well, I'm assuming that you want at least until you can get access, if you're saying that you're not getting access now. But how far beyond that?
He has contractors lined up, but once again, the only access is through the gate. So how long do you anticipate the construction to take place?
Perhaps before we can start, would you raise your right hand, sir?
Yes,
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you please state your full name and business affiliation for the record?
Sure. My name is Georgi Gurganidze.
Can you spell that for me?
Giorgi. Last name is Gurgenidze.
And-
Thank you.
And for the benefit of the members of the board, he actually was here and testified at the time of the hearing, because I know
Yep.
the board is a different composition at this time. And he's an authorized representative to address this issue today.
Again, good evening, everybody. My name is Georgi Gurganidze. We, like the attorney just said, that we have a construction loan which we've been paying since September 2021, and we can't do any work because this is our property parking lots, which we cannot get access to it. Only way access is through the gate once the deck is open. And through the construction, be honest with you, through the construction of the deck, which is not a subject for today, but we had no notice how the construction will go. Everybody knows about this, so I don't have to bring this. But my main concern is that I'm asking you guys to help because you are for us, right? You're supposed to be helping small businesses, right? We are major business owners on a Bloomfield Avenue through 395, 97, 99, 401, 403, 405. And it hit us a lot, this construction. Most of the tenants, they left or they just not willing to pay the same rent. It's understandable, but I really want to proceed with the project. This is the 2 sets of plans which is ready for second floor construction department. All the construction permits sitting here, and again, I'm losing the money.
You have all the permits in place.
I didn't submit it yet. There was no reason to submit because I technically I cannot start the work.
Gotcha. Okay.
They would like to know how long is the construction going to take? Once that gate opens and you can get your contractors in there, how long do you expect the construction to take place of the 3rd floor renovation of that building?
Between 8 months to 12. It will be complete.
I think just so you know, in order to protect your approval, you have to start construction, not complete it.
Well,
So I think, I'm pretty sure
I'll start.
you're allowed to get a 1-year extension. And it would be 1 year from August of 2022. And within that 1 year, you'd have to start construction, not finish it, but you'd have to start it.
I understand. Thank you.
Do we
That's-
have any discretion with respect to that 1-year period?
The issue that occurred to me is that, on the one hand, I understand these concerns. On the other hand, there's a couple of things that the board needs to consider. First off, the discretion can be invoked. Let me back up a little bit and say that you have discretion to grant an extension. The only issue that's really before you is whether or not there has been a change in the zoning. They got their approval in 2019. If they build tomorrow, that's fine. If they build in a year, that's fine. However, if there's been a change in the zoning, the underlying zoning, they will be bound because they did not apply during the period in which they were obligated to apply for an extension. They will be bound by the new zoning, not the zoning before.
Has the zoning changed?
Well, our new zoning ordinance now requires any additional parking demand be addressed on site. There's no longer, we eliminated in the C1 zone the exemption of parking for an intensification of a use. So I don't know if that would end up with a higher parking requirement in this. We'd have to take a look at it. But that was the only zoning change.
And do we not have any discretion in light of that even, just to say, well, we,
I think that's your
yeah,
discretion.
that is our discretionary,
When did
Thing.
when did the zoning change? What was the date approximately?
just
It was
recently.
2021.
And the
And
ex, and the, their, approval expired,
2021.
what,
Well, okay, there was, I do have to say that during COVID, there was a Permit Extension Act, so it officially ended, it ended, if it ended within 6 months after the end of the emergency, period of emergency, which it has ended. So now we're looking at, now that the COVID emergency, state of emergency has ended, we are now started looking at applications. And so you have 2 years.
from,
From the date of your approval. There's no tolling, there's no addition, it's just that if your approval expired during the state of emergency, then we let it stay until 6 months after the state of emergency ended.
So
So-
what date does that put us at for this
I don't
application?
know the exact date of that.
Nor do I.
well, so we don't know whether or not their approval has expired.
I would say it's been 3 years, so.
Well, the state of emergency, though,
Did it-
lasted for how long?
That, again,
It lasted for over a year, didn't it?
it did.
So it hasn't been 3 years. It's maybe
No.
it's been 2 years.
But
Their approval was for 2 years, but they,
But it's not, it doesn't toll.
I understand.
Yeah.
No, I understand you're saying it doesn't toll, but in terms of, again, the question that I asked is when did their request expire and when did the new law come into effect? When did the zoning change? Because based on what you're telling me, you're not even sure that they have to qualify under the new zoning?
Okay, their approval, their approval expired 2 years after the resolution, which would have been August of
2021.
2021,
Right.
okay? But in August of 2021, we weren't going after them because of the Permit Extension Act, at least through COVID.
Uh-huh.
So that was a year ago. By now, we're another year later, we've been out of it, so that's why I think any approvals that are expiring from now on, people have to come in and they have to get their extension if they haven't built.
But Janice, to clarify, it was 6 months after the end of the emergency, is that correct?
Yes, after the end of you had 6 months. If your approval expired within that time frame, you had 6 months to come before the board and get
I
an
mean,
extension.
Omicron was still going on in January, February, right? So when did the emergency end? We don't know.
I don't have a hard and fast date for that.
Don't we need to know what that date is?
Do you, Mr. Kelly?
I do not.
So it appears the public health emergency, is that the emergency we're talking about?
It's the pandemic. I don't know which, there's many layers
Yeah.
to that, and I haven't been told which layer applies. So
Gotcha.
that's why I want any applicant who's tolling, whose approvals are expiring now, I'm sending out letters and letting them know that they're expiring. And if you-
Miss, can I?
And can I finish?
Yeah, sure.
And that you need to get your extension.
Well, yeah,
This
that's what I'm confused, because you said expiring, but then you said it expired.
This expired. By the time I got the letter out, it was 3 years. So that's why we're here.
Yeah, so let's shift gears a little bit. I think that the applicant has established, that even if they wanted to do the construction, that they weren't able to. The whole COVID mess complicates everything, because even if they had wanted to start in 2020, after they couldn't have done that, even if there was no construction going on there. So I'm willing to, I think, that we should grant an extension, but the question becomes, what are the terms of the extension? And one of the things why I was asking if we had discretion was because, I would think that maybe we shouldn't start the clock running until they can get access from the other project is cleared and that they can get access. And if that's already the case, because I have no idea what the state of the parking decks construction is, but if it's still blocked off, it's blocked off. So I wouldn't want, why start the clock if they still can't get access?
I don't
That
think
doesn't
you
seem
have
fair.
that discretion. It's my understanding that you have the ability to grant a one-year extension and that it needs to.
From what date?
Start, in this case, we gave them an extra year after the date of their approval, so the date on their resolution was August 12th, 2019. I would do it to August 12th, 2023.
Well,
And if they haven't had a chance to start it then, they could come back for another extension request.
And what does it mean to start, actually?
They need to pull a permit.
Just pull the permit?
Pull the permit and actually start construction, yeah.
Okay. Mhm.
But
well, we've got a
We
year.
don't want to pull the permit if
Yeah.
we're not going to be able to start for 2 or 3 months, because then we've given up the period of time to commence and finish the project.
Right.
You don't have to finish in a year. You just have to start it.
You have a year to get things started, which is pretty minimal in order to meet that requirement. It's a pretty low bar. I would think that you should be able to get access to the property within the next year. Certainly, I mean, the construction is, it shouldn't be a year for any of the details, remaining details on the site to be taken care of. And if they were, for some reason, unable to get access within a year, would that be grounds for us to reconsider additional time?
As long as they pull the permits.
Right.
And are
So,
approved. And-
so I guess if that's the case, then what Mr. Neese is saying is that you have a year to get going. And if you're coming up on that year, you should pull your permits anyway. Even if you can't get access, pull the permits so that we can say, we can try and establish that you're starting, and we can give you some more time. I can't, I feel like we're a little handicapped here because we don't exactly know what's going on with the construction, and why they can't get access.
Well, we were before the board, that was the whole issue with the construction of the parking deck, that it was, the way the properties were configured, there was going to be no way to get into that area but through that one opening in the parking deck.
All right.
And
Yeah, I
that's
just
where
don't.
we are.
Yeah, but like I said, I just don't know what remains to be done, with respect to your property. I mean, the whole project doesn't necessarily have to be 100% finished as long as you could get access to what you need to. Based on instead of trying to string this out, you've got a year. A year should be enough time to get started, to pull the permits and dig up some dirt, even if you can't get a backhoe back there. I mean, that's a good faith start, okay?
Get a demolition permit and knock down one of the interior walls. I mean, that's a start.
Yeah, yeah. So, and you should be able to at least do that within the next year. So, instead of trying to resolve all these things that we don't know at this time, we can do that for you, and I would be in favor of doing that. And it looks like the rest of the board would too.
Now, is that a year from tonight or a year from the expiration in August of
August,
2022? So
the August date that
August 12th.
Janice spoke of, yes.
So I guess
So we'll grant the extension until August 12th of 2023. The 12th
August 12th.
of 2023,
So I'll need a motion.
and that's a motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
All right, so keep track of what's going on there, and if for some reason, something else happens, falls out of the sky or something, pull your permit and knock down a wall.
Well, if it takes me to carry the 2x4s on my shoulder, I'll do it.
Yeah, you just got to get it started, and then you'll be okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, good luck.
I think it would be nice to know when the public health emergency actually ended, so that for the next, if Ms. Talley's sending out these letters, it would be helpful for us to evaluate the next case
Well, for
that
the
comes
next case,
along.
we're really going to have to.
Mr. Neese, is that?
The problem is, as Janice said, it's multi-layered, because there's the Permit Extension Act, and that had a definite sunset. There are also the emergency orders that were issued by the governor, and they had separate sunsets, if you will. And there were several of those, is my understanding. So I think the reason we didn't have a definitive date was because.
Right, but
Mr.
maybe
Kelly
we
was-
can, maybe we should engage your services to research what
And come up
actually.
with a chronology.
Right, and find out exactly what date applies for future reference. You know, because it, you know, it is
I've
understandably.
been sending out letters to all the 2019 approvals that have not started construction. So this issue's not going to go away. So,
Yeah.
I agree, if we could get.
Yeah, it'd be
I couldn't
helpful.
find a definitive date, but I really wanted to take action,
Mhm.
so
I
make sure
also
that the
think,
record is clear.
To close the loop on the zoning change too, you have to throw those dates in. Because I know the zoning change, when that moving building, you know, on Gates, there was a big to-do about that. The council said, you know, no more 15% growth and so forth. So that's a date. And as long as theirs was live after that, then they're good, right?
Yes.
So you have to consider that, because otherwise we just approve something that can't go back to the original zoning.
Right. I mean, the statute, you know, when it comes to preliminary site plan approval, the statute is very lenient, because they just allow people time to develop and build. But they came for preliminary and final site plan. When you come for final site plan approval, you're basically saying to the town, I'm going to build, and I'm going to do it. And the town has a right to expect that you're going to start and finish in some reasonable period of time. So there are interests on both sides. The town wants the project done, the developer wants the project done, so that's why the final site plan approval has a more stringent requirement.
And almost every site plan that you approve is final.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
because they want to do that. They want to
Yeah.
get going, and I understand that.
So
Really.
why isn't the building that's supposed to go up on the corner of North Willow and Glenridge Avenue?
They started.
They started?
They put in their footings. They pulled their building permits, put in the footings,
Is that the Rose?
Real
and it's
footings?
just sitting there.
And then, once they start, don't they have a cutoff date where they have to complete it by?
That's in the building department.
Oh.
I don't know, from our perspective, they've started construction.
That's the Rose
The
building?
Rosaire building.
Rosaire.
Yeah, so.
All right, next on our agenda, we have the application of Moodi Day LLC.
Actually, we should announce
Oh.
to everybody that 14 Douglas Road will not be heard tonight. They've requested that it be rescheduled for October 17th. We'll have to see. They will have to renotice anyway.
Right.
So-
that date is not certain.
Right.
At this point. All right, Mr. Tremula.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Alan Tremulak, appearing on behalf of the applicant Moodi Day LLC. This is an application for a conditional use permit in order to use a portion of the property located at 151 Valley Road as an adult use cannabis retail store in accordance with state law and the Montclair ordinances. This application is very similar to the application this board recently heard, I guess about 6 weeks or so ago, for the Ascend retail cannabis store that was approved by this board, I think in July, for the location on Bloomfield Avenue. As you know from that application, cannabis businesses are permitted as conditional uses under the township zoning ordinance, which means that provided the conditions are met, the property may be utilized for for this use. So our objective this evening, or required goal this evening, is to prove to you that we meet the required conditions, which are pretty simple and straightforward. In fact, I believe Janice, in her memo to the board, has already offered the opinion that the requirements of the ordinance, conditions enumerated in the ordinance, have in fact been met. I should note that my client, again, Moodi Day LLC, it's a husband and wife team. I have a wife who's sitting next to me, Jackie DeVore, who will testify this evening. They have applied for the required state license as well, right? For the required state license as well as the required municipal license. Those applications have not been approved yet. Obviously, they're optimistic that they will be approved, which is why we're here this evening. But clearly, any approval from this board would have to be conditioned upon the issuance of the required state and municipal licenses. So, with that brief introduction, I would ask for Jackie DeVore to be sworn.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you please state your full name and business affiliation for the record?
Sure. So my full legal name is Jacqueline DeVore, Jacquuelyn. Last name DeVore, D as in David, E, V as in Victor, O-R-E, but I go by Jackie. And then our home address is 1313 Bloomfield Street, Hoboken, New Jersey.
And you're one of the, Jackie, you're one of the principals of Moodi Day LLC?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and who are the other owners or principals of that company?
My husband, who's in the audience, Guillermo Kengu, he's my co-founder and co-owner of the business.
And what is the nature of the business that Moodi Day is engaged in or hopes to be engaged in?
Right, so we're pursuing a Class 5 cannabis retailer license, Category A retail license here in Montclair, and we're looking to sell adult use cannabis to local Montclair residents. Really the premise behind our business is that we want to offer local residents cannabis in a really safe and high quality way, especially so that the recent legalization of adult use cannabis kind of turns a new tide of cannabis culture, where it's not the typical stoner like smoke shops that people are come to like have a stereotype of, and instead it's more of a health and wellness focus. So we'll offer products ranging from cannabis flower, pre-rolls, edibles, tinctures, and topicals. My husband and I started a CBD wholesale business about 2 years ago to really get our feet wet in the industry, understand what retailers and brands need, and ultimately what customers are looking for. And so with all of that research and knowledge, we're coming to start the business and the actual cannabis adult use space.
Okay, and you've applied for the required license on the state level from the Cannabis Regulatory Commission?
Yes, so we submitted our application with the state March 15th. That's when they started beginning accepting adult use cannabis retail applications. And the state is moving as quickly as they can through those applications, but there's quite a high volume. So we're still in the queue waiting to be heard. Our business does qualify for priority review, given we're minority owned and women owned, but they're still kind of making their way through the stack. We also applied for our license with Montclair's via the Township Council before the deadline, which was August 31st. So we assume those applications are now under review as well.
Okay. And it's your intention, obviously, since we're here discussing 151 Valley Road, that assuming the licenses are issued, that this is the location you've chosen to operate the store at, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And have you entered into a lease agreement for that location with the owner of the property?
Yes, we were very, very diligent about selecting our location and found a wonderful landlord who has become a really fabulous partner in our business. And so we feel strong about the location, largely too because of her support of our business.
Okay. Okay, and with regard to the location at 151 Valley Road, the municipal ordinance requires that cannabis facilities or cannabis retail stores must be located on Valley Road between James Street and Walnut Street. And does this location comply with that requirement?
Yes.
Okay. And is the property located within 200 feet of a private or public school or a childcare facility?
No, so when we did our research as well for the location, one of the things we made sure of was that we would far exceed the buffer zone that the council set forth. So 250 feet was the required zone radius, and we by far surpassed that. Just for your awareness on how we conducted that review, we conducted it in 3 ways. We did it internally within our organization using the State of New Jersey's Department of Children and Families Offices of Licensing Child Care Center portal to identify any locations of schools or licensed child care centers that would fall into the radius. We didn't identify any. We also had our architects conduct their own independent search to make sure that we complied. They found that we did, and then the planning report that the planning board prepared also verifies that finding as well.
Right. And the architect provided a radius map that was included with the application materials?
Yes, that's
right?
correct.
Okay, I'd like you to discuss briefly, the way the business will be operated from this facility, assuming this application is approved and the licenses are issued. Well, first, I think it's rather obvious, but just to make it clear for the record, will the business operate as a home occupation in any way?
No.
Okay. And I think you probably already discussed this, but the type of products that would be sold from the location?
Yeah, so if, for anyone who's not familiar with what's sold at adult use dispensaries, it's a range of products from cannabis flower, which is the bud itself, to edibles, vapes, topicals, tinctures. It's kind of a whole assortment of different products that you can purchase now legally if you're over the age of 21.
Okay. And will cannabis products be sold exclusively from this location?
Yes.
Okay. Will you sell any products from a vehicle or other mobile or movable structures?
No.
Okay. And what are your proposed hours of operation?
So we're proposing to operate the store from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week.
Okay. And you presented with the application a floor plan for the space, which is shown on the screen there. You might need to take a, okay. All right, so would you walk the board through the floor plan that's shown on the screen and it was submitted with the application package?
Sure, yes.
Has that been marked into evidence, Mr. Tremolo?
It's part of the application.
It's just part of the
I don't know that Janice marked exhibits.
A1 is the application. A2 is the certification of taxes paid. A3 is the proof of publication. A4 is the affidavit of service. A5 is the survey prepared by Richard Hudson dated January 6, 2022. A6 is the 4-page drawing set prepared by KSS Architects dated July 26, 2022. And A7 is the planning report dated August 12th, 2022. And what we have up there is a digital copy of A6.
And that slide,
SK4.
SK4?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So this is just, I can do this really briefly, but this is just kind of giving you a walkthrough of our floor plan. And so my husband and I have visited over 100 dispensaries across the United States and legal adult use states to really understand what makes a dispensary run very smoothly and efficiently, and then also what's the best layout for the customer's experience. And so from that, that's what's informed our floor plan here. So the back of our store has a dedicated parking lot where we have 10 spaces that are dedicated to our storefront. Once a customer is parked in the parking lot, the entrance to the store will be right directly on the sidewalk, and then you enter into a waiting area. Here, as standard for a dispensary, the first line of action for us is to verify that everyone's over the age of 21 years old. And what's unique about our business, too, is that we're making sure that we control the flow even more by requiring that everyone had already ordered their, placed their orders online prior to coming to the store. So we make sure that we're really only attracting customers that are over the age of 21 and actually have the intent to purchase cannabis. once someone's identity has been verified, their age has been verified, and then also that their order is ready for pickup, our front desk associate will let them come in and actually enter the retail sales floor where a cash wrap will be. And so here, you would just enter the store like any other retail experience. You would go to the cash wrap, you would say your pickup order number, the order would be brought to you, verify what's in the order. Again, your ID would be checked, and so that's standard in the adult use cannabis industry and medical as well, to have your ID verified twice, your age verified twice. And then the payment would be completed, and you would exit the facility. To walk you through just a little bit more of the floor plan, we have our vault, which is our daily inventory vault. So 2 vaults on the property. We have a basement as well. I'll get to that in a second. But this vault will just hold all the inventory that we plan to sell that day. So it's really good just from a security perspective, not that you have all your products stored in one place and that you kind of bifurcate it to what you only intend to sell that day. There's a dedicated security room, so one of our security guards will be able to monitor the flow of traffic and then also surveillance in and around the store. 2 bathrooms that'll be locked and secured just for employee access. We will provide access to customers who need it for maybe medical reasons, but otherwise we'd like to keep them secure just for employees only. And then the space right here, which we marked as community space. And so what the use of this space really is for customers who are not familiar with cannabis, new or inexperienced users who might have a little more questions that they can't solve online on our website. In that instance, they can book an appointment to meet with one of what we call our bud tenders, which is industry nomenclature for a sales associate, who can walk them through the different types of cannabis products, understanding what products might work best for them, and then help them make their selections. In this room as well, why we call it the community space, is we really want to showcase Montclair's residents. And so we'd like to display local art from Montclair artists, books, music, etc., and kind of make this an all-encompassing space and something that's welcoming and fresh and new. I noticed it was in the planning report on this topic, so I might as well cover it here. There's absolutely no consumption on site, including in the community space, and that's not just based on our business practice, but state and local law. The stairwell will take you to the basement, and the basement has a break room for our employees, IT room, and then the vault. So this is where the bulk of our inventory will be stored that isn't being sold for that daily inventory. And that's pretty much it on the floor plan, but I can stay up here to answer particular questions. Otherwise, I can just go back. Alan?
Would people, the door in the front of the building on Valley Road, would that be utilized as sort of an exit door?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and we really thought a lot about this with this location, and especially during the tours that we went through, we found that the best dispensaries actually were able to congregate all the customer flow behind the building where it wasn't necessarily disruptive to the front of the street. Sometimes you see with dispensaries, especially new ones coming onto the market, a lot of queuing, and that's something that we really want to avoid. So we can control all the customer flow to the primary entrance in the back and just have this remain as an exit.
Okay. And what is your intention for the design of the front windows?
Yeah, it's another great question too, and that's also why our primary entrance can work in the back, because sticking with the zoning requirements as well, and also just the beautification of Montclair, we want to keep our windows glass. And so state law sometimes makes that difficult for operators, because state law doesn't let, you're not allowed to show any cannabis from the front windows of a store. But given the fact that everything will be contained in this back room, we will actually be able to have the front windows be glass. And in line with the code as well.
Okay. There were a couple of things listed in Janice Talley's report under planning considerations. I think you've addressed a couple of those already. There was a comment about a board-on-board fence and gate enclosing the dumpster enclosure. That was, I guess, was a requirement of prior site plan approval, but it's been removed. Are you going to reinstall?
Yes, we've spoken with our landlord about that, and it will be removed.
Okay, so you agree to that condition. And there was also a comment about removing from the parking area trailers, trash, and commercial vehicles.
Yes.
You comply with that as well?
Yes.
Okay. We already discussed the windows, and we know that you need state and municipal licenses. I think that's all I have for Ms. DeVore. She's happy to answer any questions. Her husband is here to help out if necessary.
Yeah, could you run through the size of the store? And it's not just, I mean, the store is part of the building. Explain to us how all the parking is going to work. I know that you mentioned that there's 10 just for this store, but there's also, it looks like there's apartments upstairs, and there's the Salt Float Center next door. So if you can run through how the parking is going to work, that'd be great.
Sure. So to answer your first question, just on the size of the space, so in total, including the first floor, the patio waiting area, and the basement, it's around 3,200 square feet. And so the total first floor and then patio is around 2,300 square feet, and then the basement is around 900.
Don't count the patio. What's the, I'm sorry. What's the retail area?
1,841 square feet.
Okay, and so the retail is 1841, that's first floor?
Correct.
And what's the basement?
906 square feet.
Okay.
And then on your second question regarding the parking, so yeah, you're correct that there's residential on the second floor of the building. And then also directly adjacent and part of the same property is the Salt Float Center. And so there's a common shared parking lot in the rear of 151 Valley Road, and then the Salt Float Center. We have 10 dedicated parking spots. Salt Float Center, I don't want to misquote how many they have, but they have a handful of parking spots, and then the remainder are for the tenants that live upstairs, and then also the landlord owns an apartment building directly next to the store, separated by a driveway. We've also, just maybe to give a little more color on how we've been thinking about parking, because we know it's really important, especially in Montclair. We've been in conversations with the commercial storefront owner that crossed the street, if you all are familiar with this location, with a quick check. And to discuss if we can share parking there as well, especially some of those buildings have different operating hours than ours and are closed on certain days even. So there's vacant parking spots that there's a way where we may be able to work together with them.
How many employees do you have?
So we anticipate hiring at least 20 employees in the first year. And during one particular shift, we'd average around having 7 to 15 employees on site.
And so where are they supposed to park?
Yeah, so this is something we're really trying to think about too. And so our suggestions right now are that conversation across the street in terms of sharing parking. We also noticed that Van Vleck Road sometimes stays vacant. We've been kind of monitoring the hours of traffic flows there, and there's sometimes a handful of empty parking spots that never get used there, so we have identified maybe that's a good solution. Also, we've committed to the town to hire at least 50% full-time employees locally in Montclair, so we hope that a lot of people can come to the store on foot or on bike, but it's something that we're currently working through to see parking beyond what I just shared.
It's also a very narrow driveway coming in and going out. Do you know the dimensions of that?
Yeah, so I don't have the dimensions with me right now. I do know that we did measure the driveway, and it does meet the, actually, I think oh yeah, it's in the planning report. The shared driveway needs to be a minimum width of 11.7 feet, and ours exceeds that, I think, by 2 feet from what I measured.
That's a two-way driveway, only has to be 11 feet?
I believe a variance. If you look at the resolutions that were attached to my report, variances were granted for the parking, for the driveway, for the mixed use on this property back in 2002.
Yeah, but what was there in 2002? Was it?
It was, well, a retail use on the first floor, then it
Right.
became a restaurant,
Right.
and the residential above. So from a parking perspective, the required parking hasn't changed. This is considered a retail use, so the retail parking numbers apply.
No, I drove behind the building, and it's really tight back there. I don't know how they're going to, it's just, even just going up and down the driveway, if you have people coming and going, you have
Yeah.
employees parking, have, tenants parking.
That was all part of the 2002 approval.
If I can offer this as well, just to share the research we've been doing around parking. Number one, we're also going to engage a parking and traffic specialist, just so we can make sure that we're assessing the situation and scope with experts. But one of our ideas as well is to have a parking attendant on staff to make sure that we are managing safe customer traffic flows in and outside the parking lot. We've also just identified in general that area with or without our business does sometimes have that traffic that might actually benefit from our parking person kind of helping to direct flow. So that's something we've been thinking about.
Aren't you appointment-based?
I was just gonna ask that. Yeah.
Yep.
So shouldn't the appointments deal with the flow of parking?
That's
Customers coming to your facility?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're doing it by design, but just to address any even extenuating concerns that wouldn't be addressed by appointments, we might take that extra layer of also having someone there to help.
But just to focus on what Janice is saying, you are scheduling people online. They have to purchase the product or they have to order it in advance. Is that how it works?
Yes.
So if they're ordering in advance, and you're not allowing them on site until it's ready, correct? And is there a way to make sure to schedule that so that it doesn't overburden the lot?
Yeah, so that is the primary way we're trying to
Okay.
handle customer flow is by scheduling when they can and come pick up their products.
And the system you have in place now currently allows you to schedule the times?
Yeah, a lot of
Okay.
dispensaries, including Ascend and Montclair, have these appointment scheduling softwares that are really easy to manage, and we can turn on appointments and turn them off.
But yet you have 2 waiting areas. So it's anticipated that people will come, park their cars, go into the business and wait. So.
We only have 1 waiting area, and I guess the waiting area, what we're using that for is just really just to handle people coming in for the appointments to check their IDs. Most dispensaries will call this the waiting area, so it's more just industry nomenclature than anything else.
That's not a waiting area in the back or a seating area in the back for people to chat with, you know,
No, so
your
that one,
consultants?
yeah, that was for also appointment-based as well, if you'd like a one-on-one consultation.
That was the front where they have all the art, is that where that was? And that's where, so that's where the painting will be, the books will be, they'll be in the front, that's where you have, but you also have to make an appointment. You said that there won't be any products sold up there, so how do they know that during the consultation, how are they made aware of what options there are for purchase?
Yeah, so we have iPads which will display the menu, and so you can walk through with the tender and they can show you the products and then place the order for you on the iPad.
What's your anticipated flow of customers? I mean, do you expect how many people to be on the premises at any one given time? Have you gone through all of that? You know, you've talked about the scheduling, but do you know exactly, you know, from coming in, checking in, to picking up your order and going out, approximately how long that's going to take, how many people are going to filter through on a given day?
Right. So to answer about how many people we anticipate, we're anticipating around 30 people per hour, and that's kind of on average. So of course, some hours will be less busy because it's during the workday, and we anticipate Friday nights will probably be the most busy because it's heading into the weekend. In terms of scheduling, though, we'd like to limit it so that it is around hitting that 30 number and not exceeding it.
So 30, I haven't done the math, I'm hoping that you did. How many people is that coming through? 30 people an hour, how long does that break down that they're on the premises? How many minutes?
Yeah, so it's actually really quick given that everyone orders ahead of time and comes to pick up. And so from getting to the store all the way through purchase, it should be around 5 to 8 minutes. It's pretty quick.
You've got 2 minutes per customer, right?
Pardon me?
At 30 people in an hour, is that about 2 minutes a customer?
Yeah, at 5 to 8 minutes, we're putting a little bit of buffer on, but it's truly an experience where you check your ID quickly, go pick up your order, pay for it, and leave. So it's...
That sounds pretty precise. I have not seen a diagram, and I'm trying to do the math in my head, but between the retail... Oh, I'm sorry, yes. I'm trying to look at the number of employees, the fact that there are apartments also there to be taken care of, that you've got a number of customers. And it seems to me that the parking is not really anywhere near enough for the amount of use that's taking place at that particular site. And I'm noticing that there is a 2-family house next door. I'm trying to figure out exactly what life is like in that little section of the map.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't add up to be a very smooth operation. So I'd like to see more of a written thing on the numbers of the staff and the number of customers and all of that. And I'm not quite sure about how the community room works, given that there's people who will be, looking for consultations and hanging out in the community room. I'm trying to figure out how all of this works in a smooth way. So it'd be helpful for me to see something more concrete in terms of the numbers looking at them.
It's hard to provide that since the business hasn't been operating. I think she's doing her best to tell you what she anticipates. And how
Right, I
it's
mean,
going to
even
work.
mapping out that anticipation.
Right, but I also have to point out, as Janice has mentioned, the site was previously approved, the site plan approval was granted with variances for parking and other things going back many years. We don't need site plan approval. We don't need a parking variance. And the only thing we need from this board is confirmation that we meet the conditional.
But the
use
numbers you're
requirements.
describing
I have a question about that. We have the variance from 2002,
20 years.
but that was based on certain conditions, and wouldn't that be based on evidence that was provided for that particular use to get that variance? So I'd like a legal opinion as to why are we assuming that that variance is okay today if we're hearing evidence that might be
Quite different.
different than the evidence that was put forth in.
Yes,
Right,
much more intense.
because, and the simple answer to that is that the variance runs with the land. Once it's granted until changed, until it can be, or
But
until
is-
it's terminated, really.
But it's granted for specific use, and this is not the same use, no?
It runs with the land.
It was not a use variance, it was a parking variance for retail use, for a
That's-
mix of uses. But still, that's what they're proposing now.
And cannabis falls under the retail
It
use?
does.
Okay.
Yep.
But the retail use that it was originally granted didn't anticipate 30 people an hour
That's right.
coming through the
That's what
premises.
we're
Right.
talking about.
That's the issue.
That's the issue.
That may be true, but from a variance perspective, there's no variance because the parking requirement has not changed when you do the calculations per our code.
In an effort to address some of these concerns, you had mentioned that you imagine at least some of your employees will bike and walk to the facility since 50% will be in Montclair. Presumably that goes for some portion of your customer base as well. Are you taking any steps to incentivize biking by perhaps installing secure bike storage, making it very apparent how to access the facility, being that your entrance appears to be on a parking lot, not on the street? You want to make it something it's clear pedestrians and bikers know they can access. How do you plan to do so?
Yep, so that's a great point. That is part of our plan. We're offering discounts to people who travel sustainably to our store. And we also are going to be installing bike racks as well. Those are going to be widely advertised online. And then also, too, when you actually complete your order, we'll encourage you to travel in a sustainable or public transportation format to the store. Those are kind of some of the ideas that we have in terms of getting the word out there about transporting to the store in a sustainable way. I think also, too, just to quickly touch on one other point, and of course, I'm not an engineering or traffic expert, but just to offer as well that this was previously a quite busy restaurant, and so up until COVID, so far beyond 2002. And so the business was adequately supported by the parking around this area. And it was an Italian restaurant that, from what I understand, was bustling. So just to offer that, I know that that's not necessarily rooted by an expert opinion, but just saying that the use was a restaurant, which I think is kind of an high impact use.
I have two questions. You said that you have 10 devoted spaces. Is that in your lease, that those are, and are they delineated as to which spaces are, quote, yours, end quote?
Yes.
And I'm correct, right? There will not be any retail sales. People must order online and come in and just pick up from you.
No, let me just kind of clarify that point. The point of purchase will be in the store. The reason for that is we wouldn't want to pre-sell cannabis to anyone who is not actually 21. So.
Aren't you
they-
required to use cash as well, or am I incorrect on that point for sales? Can you do credit card sales?
I don't
Um,
think so.
Can't, right? It has to be cash, right?
So this also is a
Yeah.
nuanced point too. We can accept credit cards or debit cards, but there are locally chartered banks that have digital payment solutions that we can use legally. So when you hear cashless ATMs from dispensaries, that is something that is a severe gray area. That my husband and I are both attorneys, so when it comes to compliance, we take it very seriously. We will be only accepting cash or legally and federally allowed digital payment solutions. And I'm sorry, Mr. Neese, on your second point, it was about the point of purchase.
Sales.
Correct. So you can place an order online for pickup in store, but that pickup will also have the transaction completed there, i.e. paying with cash or through this digital payment solution, because we don't want to sell cannabis to anyone online that we haven't fully verified as 21.
So if I come in, I order online and I want item A, can I come in, and when I come in, I can get, in addition to item A, I can get item B, C, and D?
So we're still working out how we would handle addendums to an online order. In theory, if we have it available in our store, I don't see why we would not be able to sell it to you.
And just so that I'm clear, I would have to do that. I would have to order that online in order to gain access to your store. People who walk in off the street will not be able to do that. They will not be able to walk in off the street. Is that correct?
As currently planned, we're not planning to have walk-in flow customer traffic in that way.
Could that change?
Yes.
And what would the change be contingent on?
The change would be contingent on understanding the business, understanding the customer demand, understanding if this flow actually hurts our customers' experience and they'd rather walk in. This is a rapidly changing market, and so we're trying to make sure we understand not just the New Jersey customer, but really the local customer here on the ground and seeing their needs. So in our business, we like to plan as closely as we can, but want to make sure that we can remain flexible within compliance with the state and local laws.
So it's the market forces that will affect that change. It has nothing to do with your license or what you're permitted to do in the premises.
That's correct. Also, too, just I know parking is a concern, so I might just offer this other note as well. And I know everyone in this industry is really trying to make sure that we address parking. We chose a site location that actually had spots. And from our research in New Jersey, I am confident in saying that an overwhelming majority of dispensary operators like us don't have dedicated parking, and we took it really seriously. So I really appreciate all the comments tonight, because it's something we think through a lot painstakingly. But we are trying our best to make sure that we can accommodate the customer flow with parking. But it will be hard and limiting for other industry operators to even find a location that's properly zoned with parking.
On the survey, can you mark it on and show us the parking that you have? Maybe that would be
I'll look to my husband if I'm missing the spots, but we have the first row up here, right, adjacent to the sidewalk that would lead into the store. These four.
Wait, 4? Or there's 6 spaces there.
5 plus a handicap.
5 plus handicap.
He's more familiar with the survey than I am, so he can read it. You need to be witness.
Yeah, you should get,
Let's,
Into the microphone there.
be sworn in.
boy, he just like raises his hand. It's like,
Yeah, he's a lawyer.
Sir, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you please state your full name for the record?
My name is Pierre Kangaroo.
Perhaps you could spell that.
Turn
Is your
mic
microphone on?
Turn your mic on.
So we can capture it all.
If the green light's on,
It looks green, it looks like it's on, but
then you just need to get close to it. If it's green.
my name is Pierre Mokengu. I'm one of the principals of Moodi Day LLC.
Just spell your name.
B as in boy, I as in igloo, Y-E-R-E-M. That's my first name. Last name, Okengu, O-K-E-N-G-W-U. Thank you. So yeah, we'll have 10 dedicated spots for our store. We have 6 over here, and just right in front of the storefront. There are 2 additional spots over here, and then there are 4 within the parking garage here.
That's 12.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm sorry, our landlord will be holding onto a couple for just her own personal use, but we'll have 10 in total.
So,
These 6 right here, 2 over here.
Isn't
then-
there another tenant in the building, or are you the sole
Okay,
tenant?
so Salt Flow Center has these 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces right here.
and the tenants, there's apartments upstairs, right? How
They
many?
are, and so the tenants have their own dedicated parking right. I don't think this survey does much justice, but there are
Yeah.
a number of parking spots.
And so that's behind a 3-family house, so where do those tenants park?
Excuse me?
Is it, I thought those, what you just pointed to are behind a 3-family house that shares the driveway with your building.
Mm,
That's the residential parking for the other tenants. They all share it. In terms of how many spots are allocated to the residents, we're not necessarily sure how that works. We just know that we have these 10 spots.
We have these spots, we don't touch the tenant spots.
Does it include the garage? Who parks in the garage?
We will have the garage.
So there's 4 spaces in the garage that count towards your use?
I believe there's either 4 or 3. I do know that we'll have 6 here, 2 here, and the remainder makes up 10.
So how are you going to use the garage for customers?
So that's why we're saying the parking is kind of in plan right now, because that could be used for employees, so it's easier to just have them park there. We've also talked with the Salt Flow Center owner, who has said that we could also share parking with him as well.
I think when it comes to things like the garage, I mean, we're looking for space for delivery intake. Our folks like our general manager, our managers will need dedicated spots themselves. There's primarily all these spots will be for customers. I think it is important to note that this property in itself has, I don't think there's many properties in this area that has this much dedicated parking, let alone in other areas that are zoned for cannabis use as well.
Tell us about your deliveries. How is that going to work in that parking lot?
Okay, so so when the delivery's coming in, they'll call our store. Our security guard will notify the delivery driver that it's okay to actually come in, that it's safe to come in. The delivery driver will drive through the driveway into one of the parking spots. At least that's how we're contemplating it right now, in the garage. And then they'll be escorted with the security personnel, as well as one of our inventory managers or leads, into the store, down into the inventory intake room.
And that's during 9 to 5, your business hours?
That's between 8 to 5 to allow for visibility. We're hopeful that we can get deliveries in before operating hours, but we'll accommodate later hours if we need to.
And how is trash picked up?
Trash is picked up no differently than any other commercial space on Valley. We have no waste. All product that comes into our store is prepackaged. All cannabis products that come to the store is prepackaged as regulated by the state. So we don't anticipate any waste really. And if we do, we'll work with a licensed waste trash remover or cannabis waste removal company to remove it from the site.
And how do people back out of that driveway? not the driveway, the garage. It seems like it's very narrow to get through.
I will say, I mean, look, we've been holding this space since December, so we come here pretty regularly. We've not had an issue. Soft Flow Center has tons of customers, residential customers here. There's no accidents that I've been aware of, and as Jackie mentioned, to the extent that this becomes unmanageable, we will have parking attendants on site.
But they're not backing out of the driveway, are they?
They wouldn't be, and
The garage, I'm
Garage.
saying the
Okay.
garage, sorry, yeah, I misspoke, yeah.
Okay.
The garage, how do they maneuver the garage if you have a parking lot full?
So I think we mentioned the garage we would use for employees, so it's more of a, you're there for your shift, and you wouldn't be coming in and out customer flow in the garage.
Yeah, I think that there's more than 20 feet between the garage and the nearest parking space, so.
Looked tight to me, the way the angle of the garage
No,
and the parking spots.
I
don't
understand,
know.
but there's
Yeah.
at least 20 feet.
Yeah, okay. Mhm.
While you've got it up there, where do you anticipate putting something like the bike racks on the plan?
Yeah, so there's a great access area, on the sidewalk here before you enter the patio, and so there's tons of space where we could put bike racks.
And do you know why the landlord has kept the garage? It seems like a weird thing to have there, just generally.
I think it's being used for storage right now. The landlord is very accommodating to our business as to what needs to be done on the property to beautify it for the residents of Montclair. Even just things like the bike rack, we're hesitant to raise these kinds of things because we understand we need to probably come and get approval from you guys for some of this stuff. We're primarily here for conditional use approval, and then we can then start getting forward and kind of building out a space, and we certainly hope to be back in front of you guys to just kind of work through any issues that you guys see with that as well.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you said. The two-family house three-family house on the left side that's in your drawing there, are those spots that directly behind that house for those tenants as well as the tenants in your building, let's call it?
I cannot say where the tenants are parking outside of here. We have no purview into that. We do know that all the tenants have been given notice of our lease, and we fielded some questions. They all seem very open to it. And all this parking that I've pointed to for commercial use, the tenants have no access to it, whether we're there or not. We are not in any way affecting any dedicated tenant spaces.
So you said the tenants in that building and in the building that you might occupy are aware of your plans for this. And it's a very residential area as you look around it. Was notice given to the residents all around, which may be tenants? There's a lot of tenants in the area. But I guess sometimes notice just goes to owners and tenants have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, so on that question, there were kind of two flows of notice. Actually, tenants got notice about our proposed use before we even signed a lease with our landlord. And that was really spearheaded by her because she really cares so much about her residents and her building and making sure that they have a great living environment. So we fielded questions from them before we even signed a lease so they could understand more about us, our business, and then anything that might be coming to the Valley corridor here that could affect their living environment. They didn't have concerns. Then as well, just to the second point of your question, we served the notice on all the property owners within the radius we were required to by the planning board, and within the notice especially that went to tenants, because there actually were quite a number of tenants themselves, not just commercial property owners, that got our notice. So we prepared a separate frequently asked questions sheet, which really brought them through a lot of the questions that you all are asking here tonight to make sure that they were fully informed of our idea, our business, what to expect, because we know that this is a new business in a lot of towns in New Jersey, and so we wanted to make sure we answered any concerns. I also provided my direct contact information so anyone could reach out with questions when we did this a few weeks ago, and haven't heard any concerns or complaints to date.
Does the same landlord own the building right next door?
Yes.
Yes, they do, yeah.
Is the patio area going to be enclosed?
Yeah, so that's something that we're currently thinking about. That would obviously require a site plan, so we would come back to this board for approval. So right now we're just seeking conditional use approval, really to make sure that before we take any further steps, we're in compliance with at least this preliminary step. But then we do anticipate that it would be nice for it to be all seasons.
Did you look at any other locations in the required area?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, so we looked at other locations on Bloomfield in particular, the reason, a number of them actually, and our reason for going with this location is the parking. We felt that Bloomfield didn't have sufficient parking for this type of business. So that's my short-winded way of saying yes, we did.
Maybe one last question for me, I think, at this point. Do you know how far the MKA school is that's on Valley?
Yep, I have the specifics on my notes. So when we did the buffer zone analysis, MKA is 1,584 feet away from our store. Montclair High School, which is another one I'm sure that comes to mind, is 2,112 feet away from our store. And then the closest licensed child care center is Park Street Academy. That's 2,640 feet away from our store. We also took into consideration the council meetings and the conversations around zoning. And even though houses of worship weren't required in the buffer zone, we wanted to include that buffer zone anyway. And so the closest house of worship is also, I don't have that particular in my notes, but it's well over 250 feet away from our store.
Thanks.
And there's no plan for curbside deliveries or any deliveries outside of that retail space, correct?
No curbside delivery.
Okay.
Any further questions from the board?
All right, so what we've said is that there's no difference between this and a retail store, right? You know, from a zoning perspective, I'm just trying to get my handle on the parking. So we have no ability whatsoever to question parking and traffic. Is that what,
You can question parking, there's no parking variance as part of this application.
The application is whether they qualify for the conditional use, and it's very narrow. And the requirements for the conditional use are very specific, and they have nothing to do with parking or traffic.
Okay.
And it's a
You have to meet
retail
well,
space.
The councils pick these zones and so forth.
Yeah, and they pick the area too.
Yeah.
There's limited 4 blocks,
Yeah, which is the wrong block. but
which
that's
was
another thing.
wrong, yeah.
Yeah.
That's very much the problem.
Yeah, and also, you know, the driveway, again, I might be talking about something we have no business talking about, but the driveway goes right in the middle of an intersection too, which is, you know, we know the volume is going to be more than the restaurant. The restaurant was a nighttime use primarily. This is an all-day thing. So there are issues, but I'm just trying to figure out if we can do anything about those issues. It doesn't seem like we can.
Unless they come back for site plan approval, in which case I suspect we'll have a lot of discussions about parking.
Okay. That's right, this is just conditional use.
Correct.
Okay.
So
Right.
on what grounds can we say no? I mean, it doesn't strike me that we have any grounds to refuse this.
My personal opinion at this point is that they meet the requirements. And I think you see it, it's really very narrow. I think the applicant understands that the board is concerned about primarily safety issues, the increased traffic, you know, how things are going to flow around the business. You know, it was a retail establishment, but this is definitely going to be an increase in the intensity of the use, because there's no way that restaurant had 30 people coming in and out of it in an hour. And
Take home the Italian restaurant that was there many years ago. At the time, it was at that location, it was takeout. When it moved across the street, it had more customers and had more space.
Yeah.
And the restaurant that replaced it had no business.
Carol lives very close to this location and is very familiar about it.
You definitely know more than me that. I'm not going to give you that.
But, you know, I think, you know, I would hope that the applicant will keep in mind, you know, the concerns that the board has raised. And, you know, clearly you haven't planned out all of the aspects, you know, and which is, I guess, is understandable, because you want to make sure that you can go forward with your plan. But if a traffic becomes an issue, if the intensity of the use becomes an issue, that's going to impact your business in the long run. So, you know, you should, you know, hear the concerns of what we're raising and kind of take those into considerations when you're making your plans, to try and make sure that, you become a good neighbor with everybody, and nobody, you can't please everybody, but, that you're not going to, be subject to a lot of complaints and attract a lot of unwanted attention, that in the long run is going to inhibit your business success.
It certainly seems like the hours are very long, 7 days a week, 9 to 9 on a Sunday.
And I've mentioned 30 people in, and I don't think that unless you're extremely successful, you're going to have, that's going to be for between 9 and 9, that you're going to have that many people coming in every hour. But, you're really going to have to pay attention to your peak hours, and maybe invest in some traffic control. And we didn't ask, nobody asked the question, again, it's not really part of this, but security, how much security do you have on the premises?
Yeah, so we handle security in a few different ways. Obviously, the first way is through technology. So the whole building inside and out will be secured with video surveillance systems. We'll also have alarm systems inside, panic buttons, et cetera, the full basically dispensary workup. And then we're being contracted with a licensed security provider here in New Jersey that already works with dispensaries in the state, and they'll be providing us with 2 security guards who will help patrol and do more human surveillance on site.
So there won't be 2 security on site at any given time?
That's correct. And also, too, part of our plan is to have a parking attendant for this traffic control to address the issues, even with the appointment. We really have thought a lot about this to make sure that we do anticipate as much as possible the risks and concerns.
And, you're fronting on a neighborhood commercial zone, but you've got a ton of residential in the back of you who are, I'm sure, will be very quick to be vocal if you start impinging upon their lives.
Yeah.
So again, keep that in mind. And we understand the limited nature of your application here, but again, we could see the potential for some really severe issues. So do your planning well.
Yes, we certainly will.
Mr. Tremulak, do you want to add anything at this point?
If I will keep my mouth shut. We have no further witnesses.
I just have one other.
The board understands, the point of the application and what we're required to show. I really don't want to belabor the parking issue, but just make 2 points. That, the council was very specific and careful in terms of identifying the locations where these types of businesses could be located. I don't know what thought went into that, but they picked this area on Valley Road and locations on Bloomfield Avenue, and determined that these were appropriate. And the second point is, the Ascend facility on Bloomfield Avenue, which you approved 6 weeks ago, has 0 parking.
But Bloomfield Avenue is a different
lots.
animal. You're not in the NC zone. So
Well, I understand. But it's a lot more intensive use, which is the point you're making.
There's a big parking deck behind it.
There's a big parking deck behind it, yeah.
I mean, if this-
And it's commercial up and down the street, so
I know it very well,
it's
but again, zero
hard for me to
parking.
make that apples to apples
It's
comparison.
appropriate not to talk about parking.
Art, did you want to?
Yeah, I just had a question about the parking attendant. Is that something you're committed to, or is that something you're going to see how business goes? Or is that going to be part of your business model? What is the parking attendant, and when will they be present on the property?
Yeah, so it is part of our business plan to have a parking attendant. We would contract with a provider of those services to handle that. In terms of the hours, they will be there. We anticipate them being there in our heaviest hours, which would be towards Friday and Saturday. And then also, too, that will evolve once we have a better understanding of the customer flows and when days are heavier versus lighter. As Mr. Nguyen said, it won't be a constant 30 customers per hour every single hour of the day of our operations. And so there will definitely be quote-unquote dead hours where it's very light. And we also control that a lot through our appointment scheduling. So long-winded way of saying, yes, we will have a parking attendant. In terms of the set times, that's not set in stone, given we have to observe customer flow. So we'll just put them in place where we anticipate the highest volume of traffic, which we'll set through appointment.
Your husband will come up in just a second, but let me just ask, is it fair to say that right now there will be a parking attendant on the premises at least every day?
Oh, yes, to start.
Okay. Did I anticipate your question?
Yeah, we'll open up with one
So-
and evaluate.
To start, what I mean by that is that if we find that on Monday, there's really no traffic flow coming, no one's booking appointments, no one's picking up orders, then it might not make sense from a business perspective to have a parking attendant because there's no safety concern versus on a heavier traffic flow day, we would want to have one in place. So that's what I mean by to start, because we'll have to evolve that plan as we understand what the business looks
So your
like.
testimony is you'll have a parking attendant during the heaviest hours
Yes.
of your business? Okay.
Oh, well, as our many restaurants have learned about the problems with the goings and comings and the problems that it can cause in traffic and parking and upsetting the neighbors, take your cue from them.
We're not talking about valet, we're talking about just someone.
No, we're just
right, okay.
talking about, it's not even confined to the valet, but just because of the nature of having restaurants close to residential. If it was all in commercial, that usually causes the least amount of problems. It's when you have people who are living in close proximity, that it becomes highlighted and becomes issues. So.
Yes, definitely.
So I believe that it's appropriate right now that I would make a motion. Do we have public who want to be heard on this?
So are you? Oh, okay.
So I believe it would be appropriate to make a motion at this time to approve the application. It's qualified for the conditional use.
Would it be appropriate to just include a condition, that the conditional use, that they at least address bring it back to the approved site plan with the dumpster and the elimination of all of the?
Oh, yeah, we agreed to that.
Okay, so
You
that should be
agreed
in
to
there.
that, essentially.
Yes.
Not
Good.
essentially, you've actually agreed to it.
You agreed to that?
Yes,
Yeah.
those can be conditions, and of course, yeah, obviously has to be conditioned upon obtaining. the
Obtaining a
required
license, yeah.
And I think those are the only conditions that we can really put on this, Art, right?
Yes.
So that's the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Was that you, Mike? Okay.
That was me.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we
All right.
got your conditions.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any committee reports?
I don't have anything to report on committee reports.
Doesn't look like we have any committee reports. And payment of bills.
I've reviewed the bills and would move to approve the bills.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
All right, everyone.
Were any of mine in there, Keith? Nice job.
I think
So,
so.
Janice, is there anything new going on in town that we should, get a heads up about?
I have nothing to report right now.
Oh.
Is the council considering any specific parking requirements for cannabis use facilities?
No.
No. Okay.
They decided to keep it at retail.
Do you know
Okay.
what their thinking was in saying these, that little between James and Walnut would be a good spot for a cannabis retail
I
outlet?
think they thought that was an appropriate area.
That's
There's
all.
retail there, right? Probably across the street where there's more parking, right? would
Maybe,
be,
but that
you
might
know,
have been, that's why I asked
would be
if
a
they
good
looked at
spot,
any other
yeah.
locations.
Because there's so
but-
much,
Yeah.
like you'd almost picture it like a, like
Yeah.
a Krausers, right? You can.
Right, like
come- but yeah.
Nana's, or where that,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
that
The
was,
only
but,
thing that bothered me was the, because I know that property is really, really loud, but, there's no legal crosswalk.
turn your mic.
There's no legal crosswalk there at all.
Mm-hmm.
From that parking lot she was talking about, there's
Right.
no legal crosswalk.
Where, across Valley?
Yeah,
It's further down towards.
It's further
Yeah,
down.
That's the only thing I got.
right, but that,
By Tierney's,
but exactly,
front of,
cars, by cars,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
big,
yeah.
right, that parking lot has a crosswalk. There's no crosswalk until you get to Tierney's. So you still have to go across a street no matter what, or you still have to go. So that's a little ridiculous to take that, to go into that. Cross the street, come back in a U-shaped formation.
I mean,
that didn't make any sense.
Those lots are very busy as it is. That's a
Oh, yeah, I know, trust me,
Yeah,
I used
yeah.
to do it all the time when
Yeah.
I was a kid, go to crowds, trust me.
It's such a bad idea. This
Yeah.
is a bad location.
But this isn't for kids.
Absolutely
This
bad,
is-
and, yeah. Well, they should hear it. This is a bad location. There were other options. No, I mean, whoever listens to this.
I'm,
In their spare time.
Council will listen to it.
Well, I'd like to move that we adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to move that we adjourned 5 minutes ago.
Just erase that last part.